Thank you for choosing to watch this video. In it I will be tying a pattern of my own making that I came up with when playing around with differing head hackles for wet flies. Start off by mounting your hook in the vise, checking the hold and the hook. Catch on your tying thread. Here I'm using Semperfli or Semperfli, depending how you pronounce it, Nano silk in black 18 knot. This is a fine but very strong thread. Using a thread like this minimises bulk build-up and means you don't have to worry too much about how many wraps of thread you're using to tie materials in. Okay, take your underbody back to the end of the shank, and then we're going to catch in our tail, which is golden pheasant tippet. You want to select a feather that is sized so the black bar, second black bar on the feather to the tip is about the length of the shank, and then catch in at the black bar so there's a little bit of black still showing at the back of the fly. If you catch a bunch of tippet on the side of the hook, the first wrap of thread will roll it onto the top. You want to tie this down for the full length of the body to keep a consistent profile. Trim off any excess and finish tying down. You do want to cover all the tippet well so that it doesn't show through the body later, but you don't need to worry too much as we can revisit this later in the tying. Next, catch in our silver wire rib. Now, catch it in on the underside of the body. I find it easier to position it from the opposite side of the hook from yourself. Catch it in with a few turns and then adjust the length of the wire so that it's all under the thread and tie down. Trying to make sure it stays on the underneath of the shank so you get a nice even body. You want to catch the wire in right down to the back of the body where the tail is tied in. Now work the thread back forward, making sure the rib and the tippets are completely covered. Have a good double check. As you can see, everything's nicely covered. Then return the thread to the tail in nice open turns to avoid building bulk, and we're ready to dub the body. For the body on this fly I'm using Vicuna dubbing in a Sooty Olive colour. This is a nice dubbing, it's really easy to use and gives a nice buggy profile. I tend not to use wax on my threads when dubbing unless I want a really tight dubbing noodle and body. I find that damping my fingers with a little spittle or water is enough to give me good grip to get the dubbing on the thread as tightly as I need for this style of fly. As always, less is more when you're applying dubbing. It's easy to add more if you need to, but very difficult to remove it if you add too much. Take your time to tighten your dubbing as you wind on. It will tend to loosen as you go, and try and build in a taper so you increase the amount of dubbing that you're applying as you go, or winding over the top of what you've already applied a little in overlapping turns. You don't want to create too steep a taper. The usual description of a carrot shaped body is quite apt. We want to make sure we leave enough space at the front of the fly to catch in the hackles and the rib. You need to leave a mil or two to make sure we don't cramp the eye too much. You'll notice I tend to rotate the hook 90 degrees while I'm dubbing. This keeps the point of the hook and the rib out of the way while I'm applying the dubbing. Just a little bit more. Once the body's formed, catch in our body hackle. In this case it's a Grizzly hen hackle dyed golden olive. This is quite a dark golden olive. It could be described as just a medium olive. As usual, catch in the hackle stock with a few turns of thread, double it back and tie in with a few more and break away the waste. And now ready to palmer the hackle. You can use your finger to make sure the feather turns the right way as you're wrapping it on. We want a couple of turns at the head and then begin palmering. Don't panic if you're a bit ham-fisted like myself and break the tip of the hackle off, just start again. The feather should lie a bit better this time round. Again, 2 full turns at the head and then palmer up the body in nice even open turns, ending at the tail of the fly on your side of the hook. Switch the rib round underneath the fly and catch it in over the top of the hackle tip and wind the rib up in nice open turns with the same spacing as the hackle if you can, and wind it to in front of the hackle and catch in with your thread. Bind in with a couple of turns, a locking turn, and I just remember I do like to break away the hackle tip before I break away the rib, so that if the hackle goes wrong you've still got your rib attached. Helicopter off the rib and then tidy up the head of the fly, trying to make sure none of the hackle fibres or any dubbing is pointing forward of the eye. As we're tidying up, we're also creating a bed in which to tie in the head or collar hackle. Here I'm using a shoulder or hackle from a Waterhen. The fibres are quite long, so it will have a Bumble type style effect for this fly. You want to catch in by the very tip if you can. You have to be very careful as this feather is very fragile. Catch in with a few turns, double back the tip and tie down. Now try and pull out the tip. Hold your thread tight to stop it doing any damage to the hackle stock. You may need to come in with hackle pliers to get the very tip out. Just take your time and be careful. To be fair, if the tip on the feather is very, very fine, you might get away with just leaving it and skip this step. Now to wind the hackle, you want to double the barbules back as you wind the feather to keep sure everything goes in the right direction. You'll probably only get 2 or 3 turns at most out of this feather, which is plenty. It'll give a nice slim hackle with plenty of movement. Put the last turn of bare stock on to give you a nice tying point. Again, if you're holding the feather, it won't matter too much if your hackle pliers come away, as mine did. Just take your time and step back a bit, wrap if you need to make sure everything's nice and tidy. Once you've got the hackle wound, catch in with your thread. Once you've got one solid wrap on, if you keep it under tension you can remove the hackle pliers. A couple of turns, then double the stock back and tie in tightly. This is where the thin, strong nano silk comes into its own. You can really pull down and create a good tie-in without building up a big head. So isolate the waste stock from the barbules and break it away. I find this easier sometimes if you use the hackle pliers to grip the stock. Next is to whip finish, and we're almost done. Trim away your thread with the blade of the scissor. This gives you a nice clean cut, especially if you've got good sharp scissors. Now we need to apply some varnish, or in this case UV resin, to the head of the fly, just to finish it off nicely and make sure our tie off is solid and stays intact. Take your time to make sure you don't touch any of the feather fibres or the body. The UV resin does give you a nice shiny head on the fly in a single quick easy step, but this is purely cosmetic. Normal varnish will give you as strong a fly. Once the resin is set with the UV torch, that's the fly just about complete. Check that we're happy with where everything's sitting, and if you want, give it a bit of a rough up with some Velcro to pull some of the body fibres out. Have another double check, and if there are any, you can take your time to pull out some short or stray fibres. Again, this is probably an unnecessary step, but I like my flies to be neat and tidy. And that's us finished. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you've enjoyed it, please drop it a like and subscribe to my channel so you get updates on any new videos. It would be great to get some comments and feedback on this video.